Center Stage. I'm your host, John Davison. With me now from Giant Bomb, Jeff Gerstmann,
Hello.
Brian Davis.
Hey, how's it going, John?
Hello.
I'm good. We're getting into a groove now.
Yeah.
Kind of settling in.
Yeah.
I got Jonathan Mack to swear a couple of times and then not apologize for it. That's good.
No apologies at E3.
No play.
There's no time for it.
I got Ed Boon to swear earlier and then immediately go, oh,
Wow,
oh,
really?
dude.
What'd you get him to say?
He said shit. Yeah.
I don't think
Like,
I've ever heard Ed Boon swear in like personal conversation even.
Yeah.
He's usually very
it's-
polite.
Yeah.
He is.
Super
Yeah.
polite.
Like you'd
But-
think like it'd be this depraved mind.
Was it a derogatory shit or was it an exclamation shit?
Well, so we were talking about fatalities in Injustice Gods Among Us. He said
Yeah.
that's the question that people always ask. You know, it's like, and he said, I think if we made a puzzle game, people would be asking if we were going to put fatalities in it. I said, Ed, you made a puzzle game and you did put fatalities in it. You're like, oh shit. Like,
okay.
They got it.
An exclamation shit is good.
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
He's excited about stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to go and play some of that.
I did. Yeah. I went and played
Ooh,
that.
I've not actually seen it in person yet. I've
Yeah,
only seen video.
it's really interesting. You know, you look at it and you think like, oh, well, obviously they're just going to take Mortal Kombat's fighting system and reskin DC fighters onto it or something like that.
Yeah.
But they're actually really dramatically making differences to the game. Like, there's no block button; it's back to block. They've got 3 attack buttons, like a light, medium, heavy type of situation. You know, it's a 1 button to interact with the environment. Like, that's one of their big focuses, is trying to make the environment like a big factor in the game. So
It's more like kind of Dead or Alive, kind of smashing through things stuff,
a little
right?
bit, but it's more like if there's a car in a level and someone's standing near the car, Batman can throw batarangs at the car and cause an explosion there. Or if the guy's backed into a corner, there might be a button you can hit, or in fact there is a button you can hit, to fire rockets out of the back of the Batmobile and hit the guy that's coming at you.
Can you, if you're Superman, can you pick up the car and throw it?
Yes.
So there's a bit of the Superman 2 street fight kind
A
of
little
thing?
bit, yeah. So they have the characters broken down into 2 different types. You've got your power type like Superman,
Yeah.
Wonder Woman, and Solomon Grundy. And you've got your more gadgety guys like Batman and Harley Quinn and stuff
Do
like
they
that.
even bother to try and explain the power difference?
They will.
Okay.
According to them, they will. They're not talking about the specifics of the
People
story
are
at
kind
all.
of trolling the trailer for having Batman hitting Solomon Grundy
Yeah.
into the wall, and
You know,
I mean, it seems like they're like very clearly from the character design stuff that they are not doing it like main universe DC stuff
Right.
here.
Yeah.
They're playing with the costume designs. It seems like that's going to figure into the fiction as well. So
Right.
I think that you can get a lot of
it's
leeway
a
out of
bit
that.
New 52 though, right? Isn't it sort of leaning that way?
It kinda
Superman
seems
doesn't have
like
red
it.
pants.
Yeah, it kind of
Yeah.
seems like it a little bit, but you know, it sounds like
they
also,
say they're doing the costume designs themselves. They're clearing them through DC, but
Yeah.
their guys are actually doing that work.
Oh.
So you know, they're probably taking inspiration from a lot of that stuff, but it
Right.
sounds like they're free to kind of go off book
I like
to some extent. Yeah, the
I like the
designs
kind of the armored
designs
look
look pretty
that everyone
good.
has.
Yeah. But yeah, they haven't gotten into the story stuff. They did say that would justify why Superman can get the shit beat out of him by Batman, just
Okay.
fists and stuff like that.
Oh.
because Batman's awesome.
That's
There it
turns
is.
out that's the story reason. Batman's awesome.
Batman's awesome.
But I think, you know, Superman is so bad in video games. Like, you have to be able to suspend disbelief of what Superman's supposed to be to have him work at all as a character. You know,
Yeah.
so I think people that are going nuts and trying to say like that's not canon, like there's no pleasing those people,
Right.
and they aren't to be trusted.
Any specific DC characters, John, that you would hope to see in this?
So I'd heard rumor that there were some of the more obscure ones were going to be in there.
Yeah.
I don't go that deep on it. I mean, I've always been a big Batman fan, so I'm just happy that they're doing things there. Are they doing sidekick stuff, or is it all primary heroes? Or
Well, Harley Quinn's in it.
Harley Quinn's in
so
I mean, Solomon Grundy's a little bit of a deep cut.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they're gonna, fill in a full cast of characters for a fighting game, I think they're gonna have to play around and do some.
yeah,
some
their
oddballs in
temp
there.
their temp character select screen had a whole lot of slots on it.
Yeah.
And they only have 6 characters in it right now.
Yeah.
So
And one of them, Scorpion. turns
yeah,
out.
no. I actually think, you know, when they first when news of the game first broke on GameSpot.com.
Oh, look at you.
I immediately thought, well, of course, Scorpion's going to be a pre-order bonus or some unlockable character
Yeah.
or something like that. But hearing them talk about trying to really get away from that Mortal Kombat stuff, I'm starting to think that maybe Scorpion would go against what they're trying to accomplish.
Right, they want to distance it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
You'd have to retool how he handled so much based on the rest of the system.
A little bit, not too much. I mean,
Yeah.
you could pull that stuff off because, you know, Batman's got, you know, grappling hook type stuff
Sure.
where he's pulling people
I
towards
think
him and
like
pulling them
kind
up in the air.
fundamental
But
mechanics of the way
right,
that
the
it
fighting
handles.
system has changed, and they're not going to have finishing moves in it at all. The reason I was figured Scorpion is A, it's Ed Boon's favorite character, and B, his fatality is the sort of thing where you can do that in a T-rated game.
Yeah.
You can just burn a guy to a crisp, there's a skeleton done.
Right.
That's totally rated T.
Yeah.
So that made sense. And so I'm lowering my chances of seeing Scorpion in that game to about 15% from about 90%, I guess. Yeah.
So what else have you seen today?
Have you?
I have not.
You've been uploading podcasts and getting all kinds of stuff.
Putting up podcasts. I watched the Nintendo press conference this morning.
What do you think? So Sessler was on earlier on, and it's a good job that we didn't run any longer because he was starting to get really angry.
Yeah. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
This and it's our fault, I guess, for kind of putting our hopes into Nintendo in the first place.
Yeah.
But I really thought this was going to be the year where they were like, we are serious and we're going to really go after this audience.
Any standouts for you guys? Anything in there that...
The 3DS stuff was, and it frustrated me that there was like that weird tension with Reggie.
It really had this kind of like stepchild thing going, right?
Yeah.
Which I felt like the 3DS, like the games that they did show during that brief segment, and then they're pushing it off into this other event tomorrow night. Just seemed odd to me because I'm like, show me more Paper Mario, show me more Luigi's Mansion. Those are the most interesting things.
I think
Don't read me the entire manual for Luigi's Ghost Mansion.
Oh man, I think the problem they ran into, well, part of it is they squandered their time, but I think it's the side effect of those press conferences now being on television.
Yeah.
Is if they've got too much to fit, they really have to start making cuts and start offloading things to other events. So they've got this 3DS event that they're doing tomorrow night or whatever that'll hopefully have all those games, because all that stuff looked good.
And just Reggie kept talking about, like, we've got so many games that we can't fit them in here. And I felt like it was just being, like, padded out.
We had one on when we opened the other stage, that P100 thing, and no one had even heard of it.
Right.
No, there's a ton, there's actually real third-party Wii U games out there being shown that they did not mention once during that press conference. It's baffling.
Yeah. So that press conference came off of just like, all right, we're going to talk about games. Now, let's talk about our social network. Now, let's talk about our controller. Now, let's talk about everything other than games.
Yeah.
And then kind of crap out a montage of a few games near the end. I thought Scribblenauts, though, looks really cool.
Yeah, and I like the sort of modular thing now. That seemed to work really nice.
That was probably my standout Wii U thing from that press conference.
Which I think, so we booked it for the main stage, and it was sort of a last-minute thing, and there was a little bit of sort of, Scribblenauts, really?
Yeah.
But I think when you see, and of course it's got a subtitle that begins with a U, which I'm very glad that people are sticking to that. On brand. Just like the DS games that have a D word and an S word, I'm glad people are sticking to it. But I thought, as a way to extend that idea, I thought they did a good job with it. I'm not sure about the Wii U games where you put it on the floor to get a different perspective.
Yeah, that just seems like a really good way to break your Wii U gamepad.
Yeah.
But they showed Sing during that press conference.
Right.
Which, like,
is
that
Activision publishing that?
I
because
guess
Freestyle Games is developing it. That's the DJ Hero guys.
Right. I didn't know that they still existed.
Yeah, they made it through those cuts.
Wow.
They were allowed to survive.
Huh.
So I have to imagine that's an Activision game, right? Unless Nintendo's publishing it somehow.
There's been a million, karaoke games since going back to like PS1, PS2 days. Nothing about that experience made me think. And that's the thing that I keep saying and that's the thing that Nintendo has failed to do, and that they really needed to do was justify the device. Is tell me why I need this, not why it will work on this.
Yeah.
Like Batman did not do that.
No.
For sure.
And
I think
Sing didn't either,
is the
because
best
all it
thing.
did was I'm holding a thing that tells me what to sing, rather than looking at the TV screen.
I can just look at the TV.
Its main difference is that it more closely approximates going out for karaoke because you see the lyrics and they don't.
Right.
Which,
but
who cares?
I don't view, if I do karaoke at home, which is not ever, but I wouldn't see it as a spectator event. It seemed to be implying that there was some sort of performance to it.
Right. Yeah, and that's. Well, I'm sure someone in Japan's very stoked about that, right? That's.
And New Super Mario Brothers U, that looked like a fine New Super Mario Brothers experience. The flying squirrel suit looked interesting.
Yeah.
But again, nothing about that made me think I couldn't do this on the Wii. Maybe there's
it looks a little sharper. The fidelity is it's a.
But it didn't seem like the assets were like fundamentally that much better looking than what we've seen in past New Super Mario Brothers games.
I like the music, but like that, you're sort of really grasping at it.
Yeah.
So there you go, another E3 mystery. What's Nintendo doing with the Wii U?
Yeah.
They could have so easily just. I was so both Sony and Nintendo, I felt, could have completely owned the conversation here, just by teasing something at the end.
Yeah.
Like, Sony could have changed the whole dynamic of the show by acknowledging that there's another console coming.
Right.
And Nintendo, all they need to show us what Retro are doing, or show us a Zelda, and the whole vibe of the show would, and it's all anyone would have wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and I just, maybe that stuff just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
It's hard to know why they would hold that stuff back, if it just wasn't worth showing.
Do you think that there's just, I've been thinking about this stuff, do you think that there's just like fear on Microsoft and Sony's behalf of like they don't want to maybe cannibalize like their next holiday season for?
Yeah. I mean, that's why they both held back.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, I'm sure that those were struggles internally at Sony and Microsoft about, should we or shouldn't we, probably up until the last minute on that stuff. And then
you've got like,
Nintendo, God.
Eve from Ubisoft talking about Watch Dogs, saying that, okay, yes, that was running on a PC, and then also said, okay, but it will be a 360 and PS3 game. And then, when asked about whether it was going to be next gen, he said, well, we'll see.
Right.
So, like, I almost feel like he's probably getting pressure from Microsoft and Sony to like, don't play the next gen stuff.
Yeah.
Were you guys as impressed with that as everybody else? You digging it?
I think it looks really neat.
Yeah.
It seems more like a concept piece than an actual game at this point.
I did like the acknowledgement at the end that it was going to be a sort of cat and mouse game.
Yeah, like Mind Jack.
Yeah,
it's going to have weird,
done properly. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's not a good brief.
Yeah.
They held back just enough to keep it interesting. They didn't explain everything. They kind of set the tone for it, and it's something that I really think Ubisoft has an knack for, and it seems like they set this up and then they slowly iterate their way away from it, which is very deliberate action.
Yeah.
If you go back and you look at early Splinter Cell stuff, you look at the first Assassin's Creed, it was very much about that sort of measured pacing, which you see through the beginning of that demo before it breaks into the firefight.
Yeah.
Even the firefight, they've got the time, time slowdown stuff, so they're trying to, keep the pace at a certain point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it absolutely looked amazing, just from a graphical standpoint. I like all of the little kind of hacking espionage stuff that they're playing around with there.
Yeah, the kind of the Syndicate style. stuff,
definitely. Yeah.
So totally intrigued by that.
I also I can't tell if I like or am disappointed by the constant like Assassin's Creedification of all of Ubisoft's games. Like that had you could see some Assassin's Creed in there.
In Splinter Cell too,
like very much like, okay,
lots of throat punching this year on all the demos.
Yeah,
well,
a lot of that
Far
stuff.
Cry 3, stabbing of the neck and chest. That is a hallmark.
And of course, we are locked in the year of the bow. There's bow and arrows all over the place between Tomb Raider, Far Cry 3,
Crisis,
Racketeer, Crisis, Scribblenauts Unlimited.
I wonder if you could read into anything about like the state of the world based on like what the current like popular weapon is in video games.
Yeah.
There's a survivalism thing right now.
Right.
Impending doom.
Yeah,
exactly. About just kind of doomsdayism, this apocalyptic feel. Is that why we're thinking about this survival edge? I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
so what are you guys gonna actively seek out? What do you want to see?
I just saw Need for Speed Most Wanted.
I want to go see Need for Speed Most Wanted.
I love the Criterion guys stuff, and it looked to me like Burnout Paradise with real cars in it. I mean, and Debris.
Yes, they are taking the concepts of Need for Speed Most Wanted and some of the stuff about avoiding the police and crashing into cop cars and stuff like that. They're keeping that and then wrapping that around a lot of the Burnout Paradise stuff. So crashing through billboards. The big kind of social online focus.
Also, it has all of the sort of little, they're not mini games, but just integrated challenges built into the world.
So they weren't showing too much of that, but so how it'll work is they have a kind of a dynamic playlist system where it'll say, okay, there are 8 players, there can be 12 total, 8 players in the game or whatever, drive to this meetup spot. So everyone drives to the spot and says, okay, we're going to start this next event. There's a jump over there. Whoever can jump the furthest wins. And then go. And if you take each other out, you eliminate them from contention, and they have to live with whatever their best score was at that point. So you can kind of get the best jump and then try to take everybody else out to prevent them from beating you. And it was super fun. It just looks really great. They're showing it on PC, so the frame rate's real great. I'll be curious to see how it looks. I imagine they'll probably have to lock it at 30 on consoles. Sort of like Hot Pursuit. Sort of like Hot Pursuit.
It uses Frostbite, right?
No. Criterion always had their own tech. I think they stay off Frostbite.
All right.
But they've got a whole car upgrade system in there where you're basically building like loadouts for your cars, roll cages, nitrous, different exhaust.
Wow.
that'll have different impact on car stats.
Yeah.
Like Autolog kind of taken to the next level for the number of billboards you've hit, the number of gates you've broken through, like all that Burnout Paradise stuff is in there. It's all in there.
Frame rate's good?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they're showing it on PC, so it looks awesome.
Yeah.
It'll probably look less awesome on consoles, but
right.
Still looks pretty amazing.
I will show up for anything Criterion does. I really want to go and get the SimCity demo, the stuff that EA showed during the press conference.
I was really into that SimCity demo.
Yeah.
The tilt shift, like the visual style is really interesting, and it's been long enough since we've had a SimCity game that I'm ready for it. I have an affinity for that series.
And they showed so a couple weeks ago at the pre-show events they showed us some of SimCity being played, and just the building level upgrades you can do. Like when you go to build like a coal-based power plant, you can go like, oh well, we need to put a second smokestack on this one, or we need to put. So you're actually deciding at the time of build, like, okay, we want to put extra stuff on this building to make it more efficient. But of course, that's going to then lead to more pollution in the area, stuff like that. So fire stations, you can just upgrade the individual buildings instead of just saying like, well, we need to plop down 1 billion fire stations like old SimCity style. That looks really great.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what happens because they've got that and the social one at the same time.
Yeah.
And what I'm hoping isn't that we're not, Adam and I talked about this earlier, this sort of live test of the audience as to, so we've got this big full-on SimCity that we're spending a lot of money on, and this cheap, cheerful social one.
Yeah.
Which costs a lot less to make, which one's going to make us more money?
Right.
Because if it swings the social way, I think this may be the last full SimCity we ever see.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. At least until the whole industry shifts again back to back to other stuff. I mean, all these free-to-play games seem to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where someone's going to go like, maybe we should just put this in a box, and then we'll be right back where we started.
You guys Dead Space fans?
Yeah, I like Dead Space 2 quite a lot. Dead Space 1, not as much.
Right.
Dead Space 3, I'm not so sure.
No?
Yeah, it's...
Too big?
Too actiony?
Yeah.
The demo they showed, to be fair, they're saying, like pretty point blank, they're saying that they feel it's hard to demo horror, so they went for a more actiony part of the game. They're also showing the co-op.
Yeah.
So it's this big drill fight that they showed at the press conference.
Yeah.
But I guess the stuff here, they're actually showing more of the game here than they showed us a couple weeks ago.
Right.
So I'm gonna go check that out and see if it changes my mind.
Yeah.
But stuff like universal ammo and in the build they showed, they wouldn't commit to this being final, but you couldn't rotate the plasma cutter. So without that, I'm like, why are you? This isn't even a Dead Space game anymore. Yeah.
Dismemberment. That was the whole damn point.
But this, it's not final, and they were being a little cagey about how the weapon system was going to work.
Right.
So I expect that won't be a problem in the final game.
We had been hearing a lot of talk about this being a completely different team from the Dead Space 2 team.
Yeah.
And talking to some folks at EA, it sounds like that might not be quite the case. That
really?
Visceral, the Redwood Shores team, is still handling the lion's share of this development, which is pretty much the same team that was on Dead Space 2. Dead Space 1, obviously, there was a bit of a shift when...
I think they made some cuts around Dead Space 2 launch, so it might not be the exact same crew, but yeah, it sounds like it's a lot of the same people. So
I want to go see that Assassin's Creed 3 demo.
Yeah.
After seeing what they showed at the press conference, I'd kind of been on an information embargo for that game, and now I just want to eat it all up because that was damn amazing.
I really like the ship combat thing. I mean, I know people were kind of split on it on Twitter. Some people were like, oh god, Master and Commander, and then other people was sort of like,
oh god, Master and Commander. Yeah, I thought the cannonballs and stuff looked really great.
Yeah,
it looked. I mean, it did look kind of thin from a gameplay perspective. Like it's not a full-on naval combat simulator or something like that. But that's probably a bit much to expect.
It just feels like they're making a different game. I feel like after like the iteration that happened from 2 to Brotherhood to Revelations, like it was getting a little bit tired, and I feel like just the setting changed, the character changed, and just it feels like there are by making those changes that the mechanical changes are kind of just falling in line with that. So I'm very excited to see what they do with that. Another game that I cannot wait to see, XCOM, the Firaxis game. That seems like a match made as far as I'm concerned.
Did you play the original?
Yeah, absolutely.
As it blew my mind that was 1994 when that came out.
Yeah, right?
And have you tried playing it recently.
hard.
It's so hard.
And they tell you nothing.
Yeah. It's just like, all right, off you go.
Download a
Fuck
trainer,
you.
just max out your money and research stuff, and just go from there. That's the way to play that game now, I think.
I think that game looks real exciting.
It's really, from what I played of it, it was a tutorial section that was like 10 minutes, like real tight span of that game, but it definitely left a mark. Like
you played it, right?
Yeah.
So how are they resolving the whole, like, making it work on console thing? Have they dumbed it down, or is
No. So, I mean, it's a turn-based game, so, you know, it's not like they have to have really action-y controls or anything like that. You know, they've got camera rotation on the D-pad, so they actually demoed it to us on a PC, but didn't give us a keyboard or mouse.
Oh.
They said, here's an Xbox controller.
Okay.
We're like, okay, that's ballsy of you, but okay, let's see how this goes. And yeah, it's a lot of, you know, you're working through menus and moving around with the left stick to select units or where they're aiming. But they've got a lot of dynamic, it's turn-based, so you don't really have to worry about it too much.
Yeah.
I thought it worked really well. And just really dynamic. I mean, you think about XCOM, you think about, you know, units just moving around and jetpack guy moving up and moving over and all that. But now they've built kind of dynamic cutscenes into the action where if you tell a guy to go through a door, it cuts to him kicking down the door and running through it, or running and getting behind cover. So it makes it look a lot more over the top than it actually is, because it is still that turn-based, very kind of staid approach.
Yeah.
Like
and we'll be talking to the lead designer and lead producer of XCOM on Giant Bomb's live after-hours show tonight, 8 p.m. Pacific time, giantbomb.com. Be sure and check it out.
So it'll be on
plug.
Wow, that was a great play. I was going to just get, I didn't even need to segue into it. So you guys are doing that every night this week.
Yeah.
So tonight, tomorrow, and Thursday night. Thursday night will be a big epic one, right?
We have a ton of really exciting guests lined up for the week. We did something last night. It's kind of getting our feet wet. And, we're
had Pachter come through.
Yeah, Michael Pachter was there. We had Brad Muir from Double Fine
expressing his feelings about NeoGAF, apparently.
Yeah, he had.
Oh, wow.
He said a lot of.
He asked me, he said, can I just talk about shit about NeoGAF? I said, Michael, you talk about whatever you want to talk about, man. Like, go. It's your funeral.
Who you got on tonight apart from the XCOM guy?
Let's see here. I'd actually, there's some guests that I would rather not say. I'm going to leave some surprises. I'm going to leave some E3 mysteries. So, but yeah, the XCOM guys are going to be there, so I'm real excited about that. I guess I'll say Mikey Newman from Gearbox.
Fantastic.
He'll be joining us as well tonight, and many others. So
that's 8 p.m. Pacific until it's finished, basically.
Until it's finished. Yeah, exactly.
Until we're finished.
Until we pass out, basically.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to wrap this one up. This is the bonus stage on GameSpot. I'm your host, John Davison. Mr. Gersman, Mr. Davis, thank you very much.
Thanks
do
for having us.
you want to give your Twitter out to anyone that might not be following you right now?
Sure, yeah, it's Jeff Gerstmann, like my name.
That's easy. Mine's Taswell, Taswell. Yeah.
Fantastic. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Coming up later today, we have some E3 newbies, so a little less cynicism from people that have never been to E3 before. People that are excited to be here.
We'll break them down.
We'll also have you guys want to swing by for this. We have Greg Kasavin and Rich Gallup will be swinging by later on as well. So check back then.
I know those guys.
With me, Rich, and Chris Waters, it's like 3 generations of GameSpot live stage hosts.
It is fantastic. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thanks a lot.